Routine test review part 1. So remember that any reflexive sentence means that the subject and the object of the sentence are the same thing or the same person. So these are always activities that you're doing to yourself. In order to show that a verb or a sentence is reflexive, we have to use a reflexive pronoun right before the verb. This is se in any of the infinitives, or, in a sentence, one of se's conjugations. Me, te, se, nous, vous, ce. So we have here the conjugation of the verb se brosser for you to use as an example. Note that our se conjugates. Je becomes me, tu becomes te, il becomes ce, so on and so forth, as well as the verb itself, conjugating like any regular ER verb would. We drop our ER and add our ER endings, E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT. Je me brosse, tu te brosses, il se brosse, nous nous brossons, etc. Remember that se lever and se sécher have stem changes. Only these two change, not any other verb that has an accent on it. There are, of course, others, but they're simply not vocabulary words in this unit. Remember that these stem changes only occur inside the boot, so nous and vous will not change. The only ones that change are je, tu, il, elle, on, and il and elle. We're going to do one of two things. Either if there is no accent, we're going to add an accent grave, which is the one that points down. This is what we do on se lever, since there is no accent on the original conjugation. Okay, so we have je me lève with an accent grave. But on nous nous lèvons, there will be no accent because it's outside of the boot. Or if we already have an accent aigu, such as on se sécher, we're going to switch the accent aigu to an accent grave. So again, je me sèche, but nous nous séchons. It's very difficult to hear. These are mostly points of spelling. Okay, but remember that these two will either add the accent grave or will change the direction of the accent only within the boot. The same verb can be either reflexive or not reflexive depending on the context of the sentence. So we're going to look for two things. We're either going to look for the subject, or not for the subject pronoun, for the reflexive pronoun if we are given the entire sentence to begin with. And we're going to search to see if the subject and the object are the same person or thing, since that's actually the definition of reflexive. So if we use the verb laver, we have a sentence, je lave le chien, I am washing the dog. We know that this is not a reflexive sentence because, first of all, there is no me, which is the je conjugation of se, a reflexive pronoun. But even if we didn't have that full sentence, we would know that it's not reflexive because our subject and our object are two different people. We have an I and we have the dog. And I am not my dog, so therefore it cannot be a reflexive sentence. But if I have a sentence like, je me lave les mains, I am washing my hands, this is a reflexive sentence for two reasons. One, we see the me in front of the verb lave. We know that that's our reflexive pronoun, so therefore the entire sentence must be reflexive. But even if we didn't have that, we know that I and my hands were the same person. I own my hands, they're a part of me. It's something that I am doing to myself. So therefore, I know that the sentence has to be reflexive. So let's practice. I can guarantee you that you will see sentences like this both on your test and on your final exam this semester. Are the verbs in these sentences reflexive or not? Complete each sentence with the correct reflexive pronoun, or simply write rien, meaning nothing, if the sentence is not reflexive. reflexives and body parts. When we're discussing a body part in a reflexive sentence, make sure that you use le, la, or les, our definite articles, instead of the possessive. The reflexive pronoun already tells us who the subject and object are. In order for the sentence to be reflexive, we have to be doing it to ourselves. So it's repetitive to state, again, that it's my or your or it's part of a possessive. We already know who it belongs to because we know it's reflexive. So for example, when we say, je me brosse les dents, we don't have to switch out that les because the me is already telling me that those are my teeth. Another example, il se lave le visage. We know that he's washing his own face because of the se. So instead of saying mon visage, or in this case son visage, excuse me, we'll use the le. So question number 3, translate the following sentence into French. How would you say, we are brushing our hair? Our order of events. First of all, remember when writing, remember all those little connection words like o and de and que. They're very important to make sure that the sentence flows together and makes sense. It's just like in English, all of those little words like the at and the in and the of, they're very, very small words, but they're important to be able to explain the flow of events. Same thing in French. They're hard to remember, but they are actually really important. So please make sure that as you're studying them as a complete phrase to put the whole thing together. Remember that puis and ensuite mean essentially the same thing. They both mean then, as in THEN, the next thing to happen. Puis gives you a little bit more leeway with the timeline. Ensuite kind of has a connotation of it being the exact next thing that happens. Puis, it's the next thing that it either happens immediately next or it's somewhere down the line next. But these are very, very small differences, and at this point, it doesn't actually matter. Remember that when you are listing actions, you do not have to repeat the subject pronoun. You can if you want to. What you must repeat is the reflexive pronoun. Every single time you have a reflexive verb, the reflexive pronoun must occur with it. So for example, je me lave les cheveux avant de me coiffe. So I'm washing my hair before styling my hair. The me is part of that verb se coiffer. I could throw in another je here if I wanted. Avant de je me coiffe if I felt like it. But it's not necessary. I must repeat that reflexive pronoun. The me is not optional. Our bathroom products, frankly, they're just simply vocab to be memorized, whichever way works best for you. Personally, I tend to find repetitive actions the best. Flashcards, repeating them a couple of times at various intervals. Try not to do them in a particular order. You'll tend to remember words given in that order, and then they become harder to remember individually as you move on. But whatever way works for you to memorize, go ahead and work with it. Practice pronunciation on cognates in particular. We have several cognates in this unit, and they're always the hardest to pronounce because we tend to want to say them immediately the way that we do in English. This is especially important on ones that are spelled the same way. So for example, mascara. In French, we're spelled the same way, but we say mascara, not mascara, mascara. Pay particularly close attention to the vowels. Vowels are almost always the differentiating factor between two languages where we have a similar word and it's mostly a matter of accent. The consonants really don't change. Like you still have an M, you still have an S, you still have an R. Yeah, the Frenchy R is a little bit different, but that's really about it. The main focus is on that vowel, that A. Personally, I think the three hardest ones in this unit are mascara, mascara, shampoo, shampooing, and deodorant, déodorant. Alright, so question 4 and 5. Are the following sentences logical? If so, write logique on your devoir and move on with life. If not, please rewrite the sentence in order to make it a logical sentence. I can promise you that you will also see sentences like this on both your test and your final exam. Sentence 4. J'utilise un shampooing et du savon pendant que je prends une douche. And sentence 5. Je me lave les cheveux en même temps que me sèche les cheveux.